Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Ranked here on the Psychosin YouTube channel. The very occasional sort of series I do where I rank the albums of some of my favourite bands. Something I should do more often, but you know, work and everything gets in the way, as it were. Apologies for how I look. I'm currently on day 7, day 8. 7 or 8, it's all blended into one, to be honest with you, of 14-day quarantine because of, you know, everything that's going on in the world right now. But I figured I'd better get off my laurels and actually do something for once with the channel, which I've been meaning to do. I'll try and get some more videos up, do some more radio shows as well. But today I'm going to be ranking the albums of a band I've been meaning to rank for a while. Been teasing it to a few people but haven't actually got round to it. And of course talking about the one and only British extreme stroke black metal band Cradle of Filth. You can also stick the term symphonic black metal band in there as well, and gothic black metal band in there. They kind of touched on all bases, to be honest with you, during their career, so it's interesting. Now this is just going to be the studio albums, simply because it's a lot of material to get through. However, I will admit I do not own the when it comes to the honourable mentions, which I'll do now, basically all their EPs. I do not own the Evermore Darkly EP. I never got round to it, so I can't tell you whether that's worth getting or not. However, Vampire Dark Fairy Tales in Palestine for early Cradle of Filth, excellent. Through Cradle Enslaving, an absolute classic Cradle of Filth track. You should really check that out. And Bittersweet's to Sucker By as well, another absolutely awesome track, and EP as well. But they're not going to be included in the ranking because obviously they're not full albums. And also the Live Bait for the Dead live CD is also really good, one of the better live albums out there. So the other thing I will say, I'm not going to be showing CDs because, well, let me just show you, because I moved a couple of months ago. My CDs are in flux, as it were. They're kind of everywhere, and the reason I'm not going to be showing the CDs is because to find them all I would have to kind of, just to give you just a little peek. See those boxes? Those boxes there, and yes, they are double layered there. That's all CDs, and that's only some of them. There's more there, and more over there as well. So obviously I want to get this video out and not spend half my time that I should be making more videos hunting for the CDs themselves. And apart from that, these are my opinion. You are welcome to differ. Obviously we're on the verge of a potential new Cradle of Filth album coming out this year. Feel free to put your rankings down below. If you disagree with me, that's fine. You know, we all have came into this band at different points in our lives. We like these albums differently, and just generally that's how it is. So without any further ado, there's 12 albums to rank here. So let's start at number 12, and I don't think there's going to be many people who argue with me on this. Number 12 for me is Pornography. This was an utter crushing disappointment after the awesomeness that was the Nymphetamine album. I believe it was either just before, just after Nymphetamine. I can't remember the release dates. But this album did nothing for me. It's such a forgettable album. The best tracks on it, the best track on it is a cover of Heaven 17's Temptation with Dirty Harry. Now, you have to be kind of British and, I'll say kind of British, and sort of around listening to music in the early 2000s to remember who Dirty Harry was. She's a really good singer, had a really quite fun sort of solo album, but never really gained traction. The cover of Temptation is a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. And the track they do with Ville Velo, I think that's how you pronounce it. I know some people say Ville, but I've heard it pronounced Ville. Is also interesting. I mean, that's not something you would expect Cradle of Filth to do. But apart from that, couldn't name you another track off it from memory. It's not an album I go back to very often, and I've tried to get into it, and it just does nothing for me. Coming up next, at number 11, Damnation in a Day. Yeah, I know. The follow-up to the absolutely god tier that was Midian, let's face it. Also probably their most commercial album, Midian, not gonna lie about that. Damnation in a Day seemed to be Cradle of Filth trying to out Dimmu Borgir. Now the problem is, I'm really not a Dimmu Borgir fan. For me, their production kind of softens everything, as opposed to keeping the metal in there and keeping it heavy. If you like your symphonic stuff, that's fine. For me, when it comes to black metal, it doesn't work with a lot of bands. And when Cradle of Filth are trying to out Dimmu Dimmu, as opposed to keeping their own sort of Britishness and approach to it, it kind of ruins things for me. The best track on here was the single Babylon AD, So Glad for the Madness, but you listen to that, it's just not, doesn't quite connect as well as other Cradle tracks, apart from those on Phonography. And all in all, it's a 70 something minute, I think it's 89 minute bloated piece of music that is just for the most part utterly forgettable for me. Yeah, that's all I have to say on it. Number 10, Godspeed on the Devil's Thunder. As you may have noticed, during the mid 2000s, for me, listening wise, Cradle of Filth kind of had a bit of a kind of personality and direction crisis, I suppose you could call it. Now, Godspeed on the Devil's Thunder was another ambitious piece after Phonography and Damnation in a Day. In fact, it might be in between those two, I can't remember exactly. And again, it's forgettable. It does nothing for me. It fares a bit better because there are some good riffs here and there and one or two good songs, but in general, again, it was kind of Cradle kind of forgetting who they were in a way. I don't know how the band will feel about that. Probably will never want me to ever speak to them after saying that, because these were some of their most ambitious works. But yeah, Godspeed on the Devil's Thunder, even though it's the subject matter and the whole concept of it was, I believe, based on Gilda Ray, if I remember rightly. It didn't really come together very well for me. Was it Gilda Ray? I can't remember. I've probably got that wrong. Apologies if I have. But again, this album didn't do much for me at all. Anyway, number 9, The Manticore and Other Horrors. Now this was a breath of fresh air after the last 3 albums. This is where Cradle started to bring back the full-blown punching in the face, as it were. They were down a couple of members, and they decided to continue as, I believe, a 4-piece. Which helped them slim down their songwriting instead of these big bloated epics that had been trying to encourage themselves to do beforehand. This has a much more vicious and punky feel to it in a way. The songs are shorter, sharper, and just like bricks to the face, and it does suit them. I mean, they needed this kind of album that was shorter, sharper, and just hit you with like song after song. Again, not their best, not by a long shot, but yeah, this was the time when Cradle remembered who they were and started to reclaim their sound, as it were. Anyway, number 8. It's got to be their debut album, The Principles of Evil, Made Flesh. Now, it's number 8, and I do own a shirt of this album. What lets this album down, and I haven't heard the remastered version, but I'm going by the original version, what lets the album down is the production. Good God. If you've heard this album or any tracks off it, off the original version, you know exactly what I mean. And I know Cradle of Filth, not Cradle of Filth, sorry, black metal production is generally recorded on a potato that's been left in a corner for about 12 years, sound wise, but this is something else. I mean, you can't make out a single word Danny's saying, and that's not a case of him not alliterating or anything. It's the production makes it all just one big noise, and I'm a guy who listens to slam death metal, so you know, you'd think I like that, but when Cradle were trying to come up with this kind of sort of gothic-y sound as well around it, and be basically in their early days, they will admit, Emperor, as it were, the British Emperor. It doesn't quite work. The production completely hamstrings this album, but there are good songs on it. I mean, the title track is an absolute classic. I mean, when you see them live, I think they still play it. Just that riff, just that whole song is absolutely awesome. But all in all, for a debut album, it's a classic, don't get me wrong, but yeah, there's just production issues that completely hamstring the whole project for me. Number 7 was the follow-up, their second album, Dusk and Her Embrace. Now, this was when they had Sarah Jezebel Diva join their ranks. Sarah Jezebel Diva being one of the best sort of backing singers they've ever had. I say backing singer, operatic vocal singer and all that they've ever had. She helped bring a level of elegance that helped typify Cradle of Filth's sound going from this point on. Whereas the first album was just full on brutal kind of black metal blast beats, blah blah blah, with a hint of symphony there. Dustin and Embrace is where they kind of embraced yeah, I know, pun, their gothic roots from like listening to early Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, etc., and really brought them into that sound and went in a slightly more symphonic route, not in a bad way, not in a kind of overblown way in that like Damnation in a Day did, which put me off completely. No, this was Cradle of Filth kind of starting to feel their way around and find what I would call their ultimate sound, as it were, the sound that we know of as Cradle of Filth. It's an excellent album, very very nice gothic touches on here, recommended. Number 6, a later album by them, Darkly, Venus Aversa. Now this was the follow-up to the Manticore, and Other Horrors, which was an album that I said I like. This is where they started to really spread their tendrils out, as it were, again into slightly more epic compositions, as it were. There's one or two touches of Danny Filth actually clean singing on here, and I'll tell you what, he's a good clean singer. There's touches of King Diamond to his voice, in fact, and like on a couple of listens it's really good, but the problem is it doesn't quite stand up to continuous listens. The first few listens are very enjoyable. After that, some of the songs start to kind of, you find yourself reaching for the skip button, for me anyway. But all in all, a very very good effort indeed. Number 5 is their latest album, Cryptoriana, The Seductiveness of Decay. Absolutely brilliant album. Like, this was an absolute return to form, which they've had for the last few albums. Really really enjoyable. If you've not checked this album out and you're looking forward to a new album, do you a favour, check out Cryptoriana. They brought back in more of the gothic elements on this album, and it's just Cradle of Filth in extremis, as it were. Absolutely superb album, as is number 4, Nymphetamine, probably one of their two biggest for want of a better term, radio hits, as it were. The song, the title track, in fact, Nymphetamine, was all over Kerrang channel and MTV2 and Scuzz for a while when it came out, with fantastic backing vocals from Liv Christine, formerly of Leaves' Eyes. I can't remember what band she's in now, I think she's doing solo stuff. And yeah, this was really really good album, full of memorable songs on it, some really really beautiful sort of instrumental pieces such as Painting Flowers, White Never Suited My Palette, I think that's the name of it. Really really awesome album, cannot recommend enough. In fact, this would be one of the albums I'd say I'd recommend to newbies to Cradle of Filth, to be honest with you. In fact, these next 3 albums I'm about to talk about as well, if you've never listened to Cradle of Filth, I'll probably say start here. Start with one of these 4 albums, because yeah, this is Cradle at some of their best work, at least for me personally. Number 3 is the album before their latest one, Hammer the Witches. Now, a lot of people got away because there are some different touches to the sound when they released the first single off of this. I personally didn't mind that, and they took some risks on this album, but it worked. They actually made them work with their core sort of black stroke extreme metal sound, which it was around this time Danny Filth just said, we're not black metal anymore, we're just a straightforward heavy metal band. Fair enough. You can hear that more heavy metal, like straightforward heavy metal sound coming through on the songs here. The actual title track, Hammer, which is absolutely brilliant. In fact, this whole album, as a full piece, works absolutely brilliantly. All the songs fly into each other really, really well. If you remember my review on this album as well, absolutely raved about this album. One or two people disagree with me. What can I say? It's all personal opinion. Right, into the 2 of my favourite albums, but which one's got to be number 2? Well, it's got to be Midian. I know, it surprised a lot of people, it kind of surprised me, because in essence this should probably be my number 1 in a way. Midian is kind of based on the same storyline as Hellraiser, and Hellraiser is one of my favourite horror film series ever. Pinhead is like one of the best, for me, horror villains ever. Just something cool about him, and the fact that they got Doug Bradley to do the narration on this album for the songs, etc. It made me very happy. And of course, this has Cradle of Filth's biggest hit that I'm sure we all don't really need to hear again, or at least for a little while anyway. Of course, I am talking about Her Ghost in the Fog, which is a brilliant song, don't get me wrong, catchy as all well. And as I mentioned earlier, Midian is probably their most, it's weird to say this about Cradle of Filth, but their most commercial album. All the songs on here really goddamn catchy, just absolutely brilliant playing, brilliantly written songs. I can't like, it's by like the thinnest margin really for me that number 1 and 2 in this list were separated. I mean, either of these kind of change over time in a way, but for me, number 1 is of course Cruelty and the Beast. Yeah, I actually had this one to hand. This is the remistressed edition, the remastered edition, hence the slightly different cover. Now, I bought this because I'm such a fan of the album. This was the first Cradle of Filth album I ever heard back in 1998 when it came out. What annoys me, now thinking about it, I didn't get into them, I didn't like it at first, and I had the special edition version that was like in a crucifix shape, had extra tracks on it and everything, that is now worth God knows how much, and I sold it because I'm an idiot. I'm an absolute idiot. And then I listened to them again later on, and now it's my favourite album of theirs. And can I get hold of that album for like that version of the album for a decent price? Can I? No. Let's just leave it at that. You know, since YouTube's policy on swearing is archaic, let's say. So yes, Cruelty and the Beast. What can I say about this album? This is all based around the Countess Bathory story. The band have been playing it from start to finish on tour recently. Unfortunately, I missed the UK leg of that tour. I couldn't afford it. The tickets were rather expensive for me at the time because it was coming up to Christmas, and yeah, I couldn't afford it. Gutted, to be honest with you, that I didn't see them on this tour. And this is a masterpiece, not just of Cradle of Filth's discography, in black metal in general. This is a concept album that just hits all the right notes, flows fantastically well. If you do get the remastered version, it does sound better. There's a couple of elements on here in the background that you can't quite hear in the original version because the production techniques weren't quite up to it back then. Like there's some more symphonic elements that help enrich the sound. So our favourite tracks on here, Cruelty Brought with the Orchids is an absolute classic. Twisted Nails of Faith, which they never seem to play live really any time I've seen them anyway. It's cheesy, but I mean, they're big fans of hammer horror, of course it's going to be cheesy, and that's kind of part of the reason I love it. Beneath the Howling Storms is really rather catchy, and if you get this version, it's got their absolutely brilliant cover of Iron Maiden's Hallowed Be Thy Name, which if you haven't heard, get on that, it's on YouTube. So there you have it, looking very forward to the new Cradle of Filth album whenever it comes out on whatever label they're on now. Would be nice to interview the guys, but I think they're on Nuclear Blast, who don't particularly like me anymore. So yes, there you are. That is my ranking for Cradle of Filth. Let me know your ranking down below of the studio albums only, please, as I have done here. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll be back hopefully, if I don't feel any worse, later on in the week.